Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Tech Talks with Santosh. And today we have a special guest, Jordan, with us. And actually, me and Jordan worked for quite a few months together, and this is how I know Jordan. And so, welcome to the show, Jordan.
Thank you.
And this was the idea Jordan came up with. So he said, why not to discuss about why you don't need a state management? Always discuss a lot about why we need state management, but of course it can be overkill in few scenarios. That's what we are going to discuss today. Why you may not need an state management framework or library. That's the topic of the discussion for the day. So Jordan, would you like to introduce yourself to the viewers?
So I've been developing now consulting for over 3 years now. I've worked in an awful lot of systems from finance to airlines, all the way around the world. So I've seen plenty of systems to form the judgment that 9 out of 10 times you don't need state management. Most of at least you don't need the state management in the forms of Redux is a complete overkill because of Facebook, and 2, all the solutions provide a lot of boilerplate for something that you really don't need most of the time. Most of the time you can do either a simple service or a simple function of standalone. And thanks to React 16, singleton webhooks, singleton hooks are actually a lot more powerful and a lot more user-friendly. And you can create a whole system without having to have 50 different files just for the state management. So it's all about, you don't need to overcomplex your state management more than you don't need state management libraries. And the problem with the libraries is they try and consolidate everything when you only need it for a set thing. That most people, I was working with a contractor who's been contracting longer than I have. And he goes, how are we going to manage authentication, for example? And I just remember, well, you save your token in local storage, right? And then you use fetch. And you just grab it from your local storage. You don't need to just do anything other than that. If you save it in session, you're actually raising more memory that way as well. And as you've seen with the last project we were working on together with, speed is important, and having a big state can actually kill the speed and load time as well. So too much goes into the state, because once you include the state management, everything goes into it.
Oh, that's good. So let's move on. I mean, the first question which we have, of course, why state management is needed, right? So before we jump into why we don't need it, why we need state management at first place?
So one of the few cases that I've actually seen it would be beneficial for example, is more real-time programming. So if you're actually needing something updated in real time, and you've got to manipulate that data all the time, if you use CQRS, for example, if you're developing, you'll know that one more than the front end gets Redux. You just need a way of manipulating that data when it's come in, and that way you can link it from your API and through WebSockets, and you can go through the functionality, and that way it makes it easier because the WebSocket can actually fire the event, fire the actions, and you can just use the actions directly into your state from the WebSocket. That's about the only time I can actually say it viable, or less a really high complex system with constant changes, not this. But again, 9 10 times you can make something a lot simpler, which is just as beneficial.
Okay, so I think Sirkan has one question. So he says hooks are not which hold state. So you mentioned, okay, we can also use hooks to avoid
Yes, you can actually use React singleton hooks. Someone's actually created a small library, and it's the only time I'll actually say a library is useful. And I'm doing the odd freelance projects where I'm taking some time, as you're aware, I'm taking time out of work. And I've just managed to use hooks for everything it needs. You don't need to bring Redux in. The whole idea of the singleton is almost like Angular with the services. You just control the state in a single place, and you just update and share it across. And then to help share it across, you just use hooks as normal. So using custom hooks wrapped around singleton actually helps.
Okay, that's good. So now let's move on to our next question. So of course, we discussed why we may need state management, but let's jump on to the actual topic which we are about to discuss here, why we may not need the state management. So what's your thought on this?
So my point of this is if you look at a simple Redux application, which if you're from Angular or for React, and I'm only going to use them two as an example because the one that suggested earlier that has state management built in, if it has it built in, use it. And my argument is always use what's there than trying to make it a little bit more complex. So, like I said, singleton hooks versus treat. I'll just show you that link now. I'll send that to you as soon as it loads. Apologies.
You are sharing something?
I'm just going to show you a link.
Okay.
For React itself, that's my go-to place if I want to deal with state management, because most of the time you only need stuff that's contained. And again, with React, you can also pass through state. Most applications do not do real-time updates. Hardly any use real-time updates, as in realistically real-time updates. So if you're not having real-time updates, you don't really need to control state. You only need to control state when you go into like an edit, for example, and then come straight back into the view. But React, you can just push the state using your history. The browser has the history built into the state, right? So that's the benefit of using this. And then for Angular, I actually put a post out on LinkedIn about this one. Let me just, I'll just blow it up and I'll share my screen.
Yep.
My machine's decided it's going to crash. But just bear with me, sorry. I'm going to have to send it to you because my machine's literally just crashed.
Okay, cool. Yeah, send it to me.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
So sorry about this, my screen's gone. Has anyone got any questions why I just sort this out? Has anyone got a question?
Okay, I have not received the link. This is the only link which I have, the React one.
Yeah, just is there any questions, Santosh?
No, right now, no.
Okay.
Let's see. Okay, so someone asked me to, I think, yeah, this should be visible. So this is, you're saying this is a library which we can use to solve the state management issue with hooks, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
I'm using that currently on what projects using React, and I actually find that a lot more powerful. Because you don't need, the problem I find is all the state management requires you to actually hold it in state, then clear it down all the time. Where 9 out of 10 times you don't need to hold that state in memory.
Okay.
So if you don't need to hold it in memory, the best thing to do is pass it along, and it's only now and then you need to hold it. And I'm just going to share my screen. So.
Okay.
You see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay.
You may have to actually just zoom in a little bit.
No, it should be fine. Can you see that? Yeah.
Yeah, you have probably. Yeah, if you click on present, that should be okay.
There you go. So
yeah.
Most of the people that I wrote with said that the main thing you need state management for is the authentication. And in Angular, the best way of doing it is just using native observables. One of the things you find is the problem with NGRX is you have to always subscribe, which when you make HTTP call, you need the answer instantly. Yeah, you need what's in the state. So the best way of doing that is using a behavior subject and just using .view. Here is I just literally created a simple service that holds the state in local. It doesn't even hold it in storage, and then it actually processes it up. See, it stores it in the behavior subject here,
Mm-hmm.
and they can just pass that on. And the other thing is, this is just reusable. You can actually just change the implementation because you can just throw an interface up. And it's the exact same thing with I'm gonna stop sharing now. It's the exact same issue with React that I found. People creating like 10, 15 files, which you don't need. The only benefits that people say is what about side effects.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I'm not going to say the project we worked on together, but if you take that one, for example, there was a lot of side effects, and then people just using the side effects for the sake of, I've done it once, let's just fire this side effects, and it's going to fire another side effect. And that's not really testable. You couldn't test every single side effect it was firing and make sure it stays in order. Where you just create a simple service or a standalone function, you can actually wrap that logic and actually say this does it all, and just run it through. For example, drag and dropping is a very hard concept. Can be a hard concept to do, especially when you fire off effects after effects after effects, and you can't debug it. It's from my personal view.
Sorry, was that any question, Jordan?
Pardon?
Sorry. But please go ahead.
No. Yeah, if anyone's got any questions, or if you've got any questions.
No, we don't have any questions as of now, but we can take probably the next question which we have. So why do you think, I mean, of course, there are a few applications where don't you think, I mean, in case we have a very large operation, a large and complex system, having state management makes sense, something like NGRX or Redux. So why you think, I mean, that's an overkill in case of, or having a state management is an overkill? So
state management should always be, okay, so when I say state management's an overkill, it's more, you don't need the third-party libraries. 9 out of 10 times you don't need third-party libraries. You'll always need to hold some state. But people suggesting to use what already exists. The core conception of programming is keep it simple. And we've kind of gone to a stage where, because Facebook couldn't create a simple notification system linking the messenger to inbox, the chat system, they created a whole new pattern, which a CQRX pattern would just have done it a lot easier. And you just don't get any further, and you end up wasting your time in controlling your state. Most bugs, if you've seen, I'm sure you've seen, most of the bugs actually come from state management. Oh, my state's not in sync, or it's not firing the correct event, something's slightly changed in the events. Well, trying debugging that is hard, right? It's like, I've used this here, why is it not working when I'm using the state here? And I just came to the conclusion, and especially in Angular with the services, is you can create something a lot better, a lot simpler, and then know where it's failing. So if you do need to call a side effects, is you have your service and it's observable, just subscribe to that service. When it changes, fire the event. You don't need to fire an action to do it. So seeing a lot of applications now, and you're going to hate me for saying this because I suggested it to you, is we wrap state. Everyone's starting to wrap state management into the facade because it's better and it causes less bugs. But that's just another layer over something that's already existing. It's already huge. Sorry, just bear with me. Sorry. So yes, because you're just adding that extra layer, your extra files. I just feel like you don't need it. And again, observables are great. They're coming natively. Last time I checked, they're still trying to bring it out natively. Observables been around for a lot longer than a lot of people on front end think it came out with Angular. It's been in Java, it's been in C# for a lot longer than that, in one form or another. So, yeah.
I mean, we can of course discuss on that. So you mentioned facade pattern. So I have seen a lot of developers who actually don't like facade pattern as well, because it's like, again, you had behavior as a service with subject, and then you implemented NGRX, you made it like entire state management system, and then you are putting again a facade layer in front of it just to hide just to isolate everything we just did, right? So to isolate everything which was written inside NGRX. So you wrote a facade. So it's again, you are at same place, right? So having a service as a subject with some subjects probably.
Yeah, but the problem with it is everyone's then importing the store and directly using the store and importing stuff. Your packages can actually grow in size because of that. Whereas at least if you use a service, you can kind of lazy load the services in more than you can lazy load the store in, right? Especially if you're done right. And the other thing is people fire. When I look at coding, I always look at it. Whatever I'm developing, it's going to be like an npm module, even if it's never going to be public. It's always internal. You should always write it to be like that. That way, you've got the reusability, you've got the flexibility, and there's always going to be effects that you don't want other people to use, or there's actions in NGRX that you don't want to use, and giving them the access to the store directly allows them to create unneeded side effects to the application, and it's more error prone.
Cool. So yeah, so let's move on to the next question which we have. So what you suggest when people decide to use state management? How they proceed, right? I mean, so of course, no one can guess if an application is going to be complex one in the future. So what you will suggest as we do today, which will be of course extendable, because I have seen so many projects which gets failed because they never thought that they are going to need a state management to actually manage the state for entire application, and then they end up in a mess and they try to implement state management like NGRX or Redux in at that point of time. So what should be the idea? What should be the what should be the thought process, right? Basically, when they start implementing or writing a new project.
So every time I start writing a new project, the first thing I think is, what is state management underneath? And all these projects is just something that contains the data. Yeah, it's a store. So if you think of it from, again, an Angular point of view, that's just a service. Underneath is literally just a service that uses observables, and you can subscribe from it. So say you've got a simple to-do list, for example, and you've got the 3 states. The first thing you do is have a task service that controls the tasks. That is literally all you need. And then if you do need to abstract it out, on your service, you'll have your methods to add and remove. But then you've already got your facade layer, right? A facade is just a service over your implementation. And underneath the service is you've got the private observable at the top that holds the state. So then all you have to do is abstract that out into Redux. And you keep the service layers. So one of the main things I've seen people do is, I need to basically get rid of this service. And then you've got to go through all your application, rendering it all useless, that service. Where if you keep the service and have it as an abstraction layer into state management, you just change the implementation then of the actual state, what controls the state. And that's one of the reasons why I always say, if you go with facade pattern first, is if you realize you don't need the state, you can abstract it out, or you can abstract it in if needed.
So you're saying we should, while writing a new implementation, focus more on service, try to split, your functionality into your smaller chunks, smaller services, I would say. And then whenever you need to implement like complex state management like NGRX or let's say Redux, it will be easier to migrate because we already have everything into our services. It's already splitted out, so we can just add effects or your reducers right on top of it.
Exactly, because your services, you should never actually you should never directly expose the observable. Anyway, but the other thing is, again, I'm going to focus more on Angular, but I will come back to React in a second. NGRX, I had to write a help function just to abstract it and get it like now, because you don't want to observe all the time. So there's still functionality physically missing. I get why they say it needs to be observable, everything's observable, but you still have cases where you don't want to observe. Like when you get a snapshot, for example, you can't get a snapshot with NGRX. You can with NGXS, which is a better solution in my view. Shout out to the guy that created that. But again, shout out services. And someone said earlier that React state hooks isn't meant to be state. But the question back to him is use location. That has the location of the path, right? In React, so you know what path you're on, and then you can do your active state. Well, that's reusable on every single page. Yes, you can say it gets updated back, but again, all you need to do is assign it to the state to an observable, put every single observer into an array, and just loop through the array and fire the updated state, which is basically what the singleton actually does under the hood. I won't ever recommend something that I haven't looked internally for. So yeah, it works the same with React with the hooks. Hooks is the best thing that ever came to React.
Cool, but I have seen few people actually. I mean, it's in React, but it's like some people like hooks, some people don't like hooks. But
yeah, it's more. I only like React when they brought hooks out. Put it that way. You can get clean architect, and because most of the time I jumped onto a React project, you've got like a folder just for state. It just gets so messy, and you just look through it. It's like, we don't need that state anymore. Let's delete it. And you can't just go in and delete it, which is another issue I have is your code should all be coupled together in the section that is if you want to delete. You should be able to delete. You should be able to find the references points a lot easier, which you can't do if you use Redux.
Cool. So any other implementation which you have found? I mean, for example, in Angular, you mentioned you have service as subjects, right? So service with subjects, which you can use for state management, and then you have, of course, NGRX, NGSX. What other patterns you suggest in case you want to go ahead and implement the state management?
I think if you look at a lot of the things that you've got experts like yourself, you've got the expert like what's the name that was on that call that started this off in the first place?
Sorry?
Who was she was on your video that started all this off in the first place? Is it Natalie?
Natalia.
In her. That you've got experts like them that actually physically know what they're talking about. And then you've got people that literally know the framework. And I can say this. Someone like her knows more than the people that just go out and just go, this is what I need to use and let's just use it. It's the in thing. And she's full stack. From looking at her Twitter, she seems to be full stack. Front-end developers don't know the full stack. Most of them don't know the full stack, and that's where the issue lies. Because before Angular, before React, you just made something look pretty on the screen. It was no offense to front-end developers, a shoddy job. I hated it. I never stayed front-end for that reason. And the JavaScript developers seem to forget the core principles of programming. The patterns that already exist to solve issues. And what we're seeing now is they're recreating the wheel because it looks cool, but you're actually overcomplicating the system. Like, for example, if you do want to get real-time updates, CQRS, simple command query, command straight to the server, come straight back, do it via WebSocket, same thing. You don't need to go command to the store and then read from the store, command the query back. When Facebook created Redux, they basically slapped in a middle layer, a middle tier that just was not needed. And people forget that people use actions, for example, as a way of manipulating data.
Right.
That's what a mapping service is for. That it's a proven test of time. Use a map, use a factory. Unless you're actually writing Angular code in depth, for example, most people don't know what a factory class actually is. So my advice to you is, if you really think you need Redux, learn all the programming languages. That sounds hard, but or at least learn the theory behind languages. So like look at design principles. So a lot of the design principles means you can actually get a better solution than using state management.
Agreed. I mean, I know I have worked been in ASP.NET MVC. We don't used to have actually state management there. So it was like just make a call, whatever is needed, and then find on the page. We of course we had some view bag, view data, some concepts like that. So just to do state management, but that was really hard, right? I mean, a lot of
Yeah,
data used to be there on page, and then what we view state, right? So we used to call it as view state, where all the data is sitting on your client machine and then making your page really slow. But of course, every programming language has its own advantages and disadvantages.
correct. And they've all came through iteration, and we are seeing JavaScript getting a lot better. ESMAscript's doing a fantastic job at improving the standards, but there's things that are missing, and I think we need to address them. And first thing is actually learning some fundamental design principles,
Mhm.
and it will save you a lot of time. It'll save you a lot of hassle.
I think there is a question from Serkan. So why did you introduce your own library? Do you think this one layer of complexity, and you think this is against the KISS principle?
I've not introduced anything of my own.
Uh-huh.
That was just something that I could write that without using that service.
Mm-hmm.
I just suggested that because it's a simple, really simple
Uh,
wrapper. It saves you time from writing it yourself. And other thing, yeah, keep it simple, stupid. If you actually look through that code on the scenes, it all you're basically saying is when you use a hook and use state,
mm-hmm.
when you use state and then like set state, save a reference to set state in an array, and then whenever you use it, always just return the state, and then
Mm-hmm.
have a function that's called set state, and basically go through that array, loop over, and push the state into each state that needs it. That's how I've done it, and that's a good way of keeping it in. It's pretty much what use location kind of does underneath.
Oh, okay. I have never probably that might be a solution you're saying, which works with React, because I've never seen anyone using location in Angular.
Yeah, it's a React thing.
Ah,
With Angular, I would use more of the services with
BA.
RxJS because RxJS is part of the fundamental framework. You can't live
Mm-hmm.
without it. But in React, you've got slightly different setup, so you can do that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Last mention is okay. Different problem, different solution, of course. So, just to ask another question. So, recently we got another library. I would say NGRX component store. Did you went in? Did you saw that component
The
store?
Yeah,
Yeah.
which is almost. I didn't think they were developing that anymore. I thought that's
Sorry.
what. I thought they stopped developing that.
No, no, it's in production now. It's it can be used for production. We just used it actually. We just today we pushed some functionality with component store on production. So
Okay,
yep, it's
I
really
thought,
tested.
I
I
thought
think
that.
you're talking about NGRX slash component. NGRX component. I think you're talking about
Yeah,
that.
I thought the main developer of that meant to have created RX Angular, but I could have been wrong.
I don't know. It's a different one. So I think you're talking about NGRX let and NGRX push pipes, which
Yeah,
is
sorry. Yeah,
yeah.
I have some component as well.
Yeah, so that's something which is stopped right now, and I think it's not fit for production. But component store is something which is very close to the service with behavior subject, right? So that has almost similar concepts. So generally, if you talk about NGRX is used to app wide, right? So it's a state management for your entire application. But what in case I need to manage a state for a single component? So this is where NGRX component store fits in. So I just wanted to check. I mean, if you got the chance to check that out.
I've personally have not had a chance to check
Mhm.
that one out.
Uh-huh.
Uh, no, I'm going to say I've not checked that out. The only one that I have checked out, which is something similar, is RX Angular State,
Mhm.
which is what it's a similar principle. But I'm glad they've gone down that route of local state because again,
Uh-huh.
another issue I have with the state management is everything goes in the bloody state management.
Mhm.
unless you've got decent coders, everything goes into state management. And
Okay.
sometimes you just need the local state, and
Mhm.
people seem to forget that exists.
Mhm. Okay, so let's, as you already saw a little bit of RX state, so uh, service with some behavior subject or RX state, what do you prefer? What do you prefer?
So repeat that.
So you have already seen a little bit of RX state, right? As you mentioned, you have already used in some of
Yeah.
the projects. So if you have to choose whether for, let's say, handling the state for a single component, you will choose a subject, service with a subject, or you will go with RX state.
I think that's I can say. So I think it depends on the architecture itself.
Mm-hmm.
So personally, I've gone with RX Angler on a new system I'm building um,
Mm-hmm.
of my own with a few developers. I am doing that because I'm doing zoneless. He's done a good job on making it zone aware. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
whereas if you use your own, you kind of have to be more responsible on updating zone and
Mm-hmm.
updating Angler's rendering system. So
Mm-hmm.
at least that's abstracted away. And again, they've done a cracking job with locals. Like they've got 4 different types of rendering engine, or at
Mm-hmm.
least Angular. So most people don't need to go stateless.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't want to go stateless, don't use it.
Mm-hmm.
I actually donate to RX Angler myself.
Mm-hmm.
I'm using it. I have view if you're going to use a program or a third party code, pay for it, no matter what. Help it grow. But yeah, that one, like I said, that's a dubious question. It all depends if you're using zoneless. Most people don't
Mm-hmm.
zoneless. Most people don't know about zoneless.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you do need to get performance though, switch over that quickly. But again, you're talking a very minute change. Um,
Mm-hmm.
that is basically a service that gets newed up every time when the component gets generated. So it's
Mm-hmm.
here or there.
Okay, so you're saying performance-wise, it doesn't make a lot of sense. But of course, in case you are removing the entire zone.js, we can actually go ahead and use RX state.
Yeah, I would highly recommend using it if you're doing that. Um, only if you're doing it as a personal project, don't
Mm-hmm.
get the
Uh-huh.
learning education you need. But when you're using other developers and they have no clue what they're talking about, it's like slamming
Mm-hmm.
your head against a brick wall saying you forgot to update state and that's why. You forgot to call the rendering, which if you also think about it is, I don't think Angular's officially released it yet, have they? In either, it's still experimental.
Mm-hmm. Which
Um,
one you're talking about?
the mark,
Theta. The all the private methods, right? All
yeah,
the
you're
yeah.
not meant to use it, but you can use it now.
I
So
mean, yeah. Those
that's
are
their,
actually still private, but
that's their
they are
job
not.
to retain that. If it goes wrong,
Mhm.
not yours.
Yeah, I know. We are waiting for the day when it becomes public. So I'm sure Lars will be really excited. He wrote a lot of blog posts related to those services, and then we
Yep.
are still waiting for it.
I am using it on the. I'm hoping to release something in the next 3 months,
Uh-huh.
and
Okay.
I am using it. But again, it's not recommended for production yet, and I'm hoping to get this out in production. So,
Cool. Which method you are using?
both EMOC, um, EMOC check, and I can't remember what it is. The other one. There's 2, and they use both the hidden ones.
Uh-huh.
Angular's got some interesting changes coming up. Real interesting changes. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's
I mean,
interesting.
we can see. Yeah. So recently, I mean, if you go through the change log of version 12 RC, I think there are a lot of interesting changes, but still a lot of things to do, I think.
Yeah, that some of the changes that should be making holding state internally a lot easier as well, which is
Mm-hmm.
nice to see.
Mm-hmm.
But then it comes to detail. It's whether they get the
Mm-hmm.
detail right the first time. They never get the
You're
detail right the first time.
You mean, look, I mean, state management built in inside Angular. This is what you mean?
What the building helps you a lot more. It gives you better access to things, but yeah, it's interesting to see what they're going to do with some of the function and what they're actually doing with that, because it should give you a lot more control.
Cool.
And just because someone mentioned it on your Twitter, and I'm going to address it, global this can be good for managing some things.
It was Michael.
Yes, if you want to manage, if you're not using any framework, which can be a benefit in itself, using global this and then making us an instance of something go to that service, and then whenever you're referencing that class, you can make a simple app that says basically get the class name and assign it to whatever's in global. So I've done that before. I'm going to hold my hands up. I've done that before. It's not ideal, but it works, especially when you go backwards compatible.
So I think last mentioned RX Angular template. Okay, there is another. So I think we spoke about RX state, and there is another called RX template, which can be used to actually optimize your rendering techniques.
Correct.
I think
it's built into the state as well, I believe.
Which
However, I
one?
could be wrong because Lars is very smart, so that could be either wrong. But when I did have a look for the code, they play hand in hand, right? Both of them is it's like two pieces in pod, but you don't have to use them both. So that's kind of what I mean. It's like use it with the template, but it's still in a way inside.
Okay, so this is what he mentions. Okay, RX state is zone aware in itself, but I think when you combine it with RX template, this is where actually it really shines.
Yeah, I can't remember if that. I'm probably gonna say he's correct. But it's like I said, I would, if I'm using it, I would use template as well. So I cannot count you use them together.
So I think we don't have any questions anymore. So let's try to summarize. So what are the suggestions again? So we are almost at the end of the session. So what are the suggestions when you start implementing a new application in terms of state management? Let's try to summarize.
So if you're using React, look more at hooks and actually keeping hooks a singleton, as that's an easy approach, and it follows kind of what React and React Router 6 is going to. If you're using Angular, wrap it in a service, observable, you've got way more functionality, way more power than you can use with store. And if you really want to, just create a store.ts file in a service, call it state yourself, and do it that way. You've got better access to it. At least then you're in control. That's the summary.
Cool. So till the time we get a local implementation of handling state management in Angular, that's the option.
Yeah, pretty much. And if you hate all the frameworks, look up ES7 and the decorators and a few things, and the one that guy suggested with it built in. There's some better frameworks out there, and it's time people actually start crossing over and having a real good play with them both, and you'll find interesting things to do.
Okay, last is thanks for sharing experience, John.
He's great. I follow it. It's fair enough. There's a few people that I actually read blogs off. Yours, Lars, and Michael's. So yeah.
So let's move on to the next question. So do you want to promote something on the channel?
Nope. I suggest people don't follow me on Twitter at the moment. But other than that, no, nothing to promote yet.
Cool. So in case you want to, you have any questions for Jordan, you can follow Jordan on his Twitter handle, jordanhall_dev, and he'll be very happy to actually have a conversation with you. So I think that's it for the day. Thanks a lot, Jordan, for joining us. It was really, of course, listening from another perspective. I've always been in support of using state management, to be frank, because I've been in scenarios where we implemented entire framework and then we really struggled to manage the state. So I have been always on the other side, that you always need a state management.
I used to be. I literally rewrote an application to use state management, and then 3 months I ripped it back out. So
but yeah, I mean,
it was that we didn't need it. So
Yeah.
Okay,
So
sure.
I mean, but it's of course a good experience to have or listen to another perspective as of yours, where we actually may not need state management all the time. Probably I have been into scenarios where I always needed a state management, but of course I agree to that point that people, when we start creating an application, we start with actually implementing some of the state management or adding state management,
That's the
which
problem.
may not. Yeah.
Whenever you create an application, the first thing people do is go, okay, NGRX or Redux, and it's like, no.
Yep. Actually.
I should have a think, abstract it out first, and then if absolutely required, bring it in. But always think, what exactly are you using it for that you can't do
Mm.
without it? That I know the answer is don't reinvent the wheel, but
Yep.
don't overkill it at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. Agreed. So again, just to add, in case you are a fan of using sub services with behavior subject or subject, I think you should give a try to two libraries which are out there in Angular world. I'm not aware of what's going on in React, but in Angular world, you should go ahead and check out RX State and RX Angular probably. And another is NGRX component store. We recently pushed out a feature in our own at our own work where we actually used component store to manage state of entire table component which we had. So
Is
it
that
was
the
really
NGRX
complex.
component you're using that then?
NGRX component store.
I'll have a look at that.
Yeah. Yep. So these are two different solutions. Just wanted to give a shout out because they both are doing really amazing job and to avoid the complexity. So of course they deserve the shout out. Yeah, that's it for the day. So thanks a lot again, Jordan, to actually give your time and having a chat with us.
No problem. Literally is.
Yeah. So probably we'll see you in future again on the channel.
I don't like doing these.
I
I'm not
mean,
gonna lie.
you said you are working on something in 3 months. So probably
Yeah.
once you are ready, just let me know. We can actually have a conversation about the library you are working on.
Will do. Literally is.
Yeah, cool. So just to give you an idea, we have another episode coming up on this Friday, and this Friday is actually a Good Friday. So I have an holiday here, so I decided to have another episode, but a little bit earlier. So it's 8 p.m. IST, and we are going to talk about uh, a framework which is created for static. It's a static site generator. Basically, it's known as Abel, and Saurabh is actually the creator of the framework. He's from India, of course. A proud moment for me to have someone from India who has been working on some of the framework. So he'll be joining us 8 p.m. IST, and we will be discussing about the able and static site generators. Apart from that, we will be live with the entire Lumberjack team. Will be live on JDS. It's a live talk show. So it's with Jack. Jack is who is from Narwal. So we will be live with Lars, me, probably Nacho, and Sirkan at 10:30 p.m. IST on the same day, second April. Yep. So in case you have any questions, we are going to talk about NG workers. It includes Lumberjack and other libraries we have been working on. So if you want to catch up, just join us at 10:30 p.m. IST again on JDS. I'll tweet about it on Twitter, so it will be easy to figure out where we are going live. So yep, see you all on not next, but the upcoming Friday with another episode of Tech Talks with Santosh. Thank you. Bye everyone.